Hey everyone, it's Katie and Mike. Say hi, Mike.
Hello, everybody.
As you can tell, we are back to our non-visual r couchy reviews because Mike is in Indianapolis this week and I am in Chicago. But we both watched Agent Carter this week, so we're going to talk about it. Hooray!
Hurrah.
Hurrah!
So, this is
The
episode 4 of season 2 of Peggy Carter.
and it's called Smoke and Mirrors, and it was primarily it did actually a few things. Flashback episode because there are very key things that it flashed back to in really interesting ways. But I do like the fact that it also did a good job of doing stuff within the main present plot. It wasn't just looking backwards, it was also doing a lot of stuff with what's going on in the mystery, which largely we know the mystery. Like we're privy to most of the mystery, but Peggy and Souza and their whole team learning more of the mystery.
Yes. This one sort of got into also a lot more of the histories of Peggy and Whitney Frost.
Whitney Frost, the antagonist.
Yes.
And she was already a really interesting and like built up antagonist. And we definitely, I like the fact that they waited until the fourth episode to have this to find out more stuff about her. You know, we found out a little bit in the third episode too. We found out that she was actually a brilliant scientist that had ended up becoming a movie star, and that she's the driving force behind this company that technically her it's just her husband owns. But what I really like about this is that it waited until the fourth episode. We got to see a lot of really good acting beforehand from Wynne Everett, so you already got a sense of the kind of stuff she was dealing with, and who she is, and like the way that she uses power and manipulates and everything. Like there was a really good acting from Wynne Everett, the actress who plays her, so that when we see the backstory, it feels like a piece is being put into place instead of something thrown out of nowhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're setting up who she is and basically
And they did
her
it without
struggles.
they did all the showing and then they only told us in this fourth episode,
Yeah.
which is really smart. And she's honestly becoming Whitney Frost is up there as with Fisk for like my favorite MCU antagonist.
Yeah, definitely getting up there because she's getting a lot of character focus so far in these first 4 episodes. And we're learning a lot about her, and she's getting a lot of these motivational things, and like you're really getting to understand who she is and where she comes from.
Yeah. And like Fisk, it is Fisk, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm making sure. But like Fisk, she's sympathetic, but you also understand that she's kind of still doing some really horrifically unethical things. And but you understand why she isn't a villain in her own story, which is very much what Daredevil's antagonist a lot. There's this episode does a lot. You already kind of got that feeling, like you definitely could see from her point of view before this, but then you watch this episode that she's had, and you understand what led her to be this way. There's also some really good gender stuff going on, like gender horrific frustration with her, which you saw already, like the fact that her director would try to force himself on her, and the fact that she's already being pushed away lowly age, which is like the worst thing you can do in Hollywood, and her husband clearly cheated on her. So you already felt that for her, and you got that she was dealing with like the sexism of Hollywood. And then you realize that her entire life has been like that up until you see the part where it's such a great little moment where first the her mom's boyfriend, I think it was also supposed to be like the person who let them live in the house, like, so she was a mistress slash like vague girlfriend.
To this landlord guy.
Yeah, the mom was her, Whitney's mom was growing up, and the landlord would tell her to smile, and she wouldn't smile, and her mom just being, wretched and being nasty to her and telling her that no one cares about her intelligence. The only thing that matters is if she gets her face fixed. So when the guy who's trying to tell her that she can make it in Hollywood tells her to smile, it's so it's so rough, and there's so much weight behind her her playing the game, you know? Her giving in and playing the game and deciding to use that. Yeah, it's just so good, especially because the fact, and we talked about this actually in our last podcast because I had brought up the really stellar episode of BoJack Horseman where the ending was a guy telling Diane to smile after she had been through this horrible ordeal of trying to prove that a famous man had harassed and possibly raped women. So like that was already in my mind because we had been talking about that episode that ended with a man telling of the main female character smile, and then it came to this episode. It was just a perfect
Theme.
note there. Yeah. Um yeah, it was so good. So we have this antagonist set up where she's doing horrible things, but you also totally she's totally believable besides, the weird crack of like non-existence or
Zero
whatever
matter.
zero matter that's like forming on her face. But yeah, it's so good, and I'm really pleased with what they're doing with that. And I love when these shows can actually give a formidable antagonist, and if you feel that with this one.
Yeah, they're really giving her some focus and some depth that, honestly, maybe even the first season didn't get into. Because
It yeah, the first season's rough with that because you have this. I mean, who are our antagonists for that season? There was
Dottie
Dottie,
and
who is
Dr.
very
Zola? Was it
no
Zola?
Zola
Um,
is the other one from Captain America.
yeah, it was. God, I forget his name.
Yeah, but I know who you're talking about. And I agree. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that in that episode or in that season, we as the audience were along with Peggy, where we don't know who it is, or at least most of the time. I think we find out before she does that Dottie is, but for a while everything's hidden from us too. Here we know within the first at the end of the first episode, and we could honestly guess that that some shady stuff is going down with
The club and
with the
Whitney.
club and with Whitney. Yeah. Um, so it's one of those things where in this season we immediately get to see the bad guys for what they are, which means we have more time with them on screen, which means we have more time to really get to know them.
And that's really taking advantage of the format.
It
Having
really is. I mean, and part of it too, it's another strength of this episode of the season is just like it's the same thing with Peggy where we see the protagonists, we get to see more of them, and we also get to see Peggy actually get stuff done without being held back. Or at least not held back. She gets held back a little bit this episode, but not by the people who should be helping her,
yes,
which is good.
we have
Like she doesn't have to sneak around now. She can
yeah
actually do her damn job.
we have federal antagonist um, Vernon Masters is his name, played by Kurtwood Smith, coming in and
Who is
crossing.
clearly a bad, like it's not even, it's clearly a bad guy.
Well,
Like
like we we figured he was sort of a bad guy, but then when he actually entered the club and took um what's his name,
Yeah.
um not Souza, who's the other guy,
Thompson.
Thompson. When he took Thompson to the club, that pretty much confirmed where his allegiances lie.
That is true. And then here in this episode they were going to raid the club and suddenly, oh, conveniently,
Kurtwood Smith comes in, surprise investigation, you
and then
guys.
starts like telling all of them that they will be suspected communists. So,
You
and I
wouldn't want
love
to
that
be on
Peg.
the wrong side, would
Yeah,
you
and I
now?
love that Peggy like immediately goes to Susan and goes, "Yeah, I heard that exact speech too." Like, and then neither of them are they're annoyed and they're frustrated and they're mad, but they're not like phased by it, which I really appreciate. Um, and I while we're on the subject of that scene, I realized that like Sousa has to get his act together because he's still either going to be engaged, he's thinking about getting engaged, he has the ring. I don't think he's actually proposed yet, still, right?
Nope.
Um, and he clearly has feelings for Peggy, and he really needs to he needs to sort himself out. That being said, his whole I don't think it was exactly a speech, but his whole moment where he tells Peggy that he's going to stand by her till the end. One, I'm really hoping that they're not setting it up to be where they're not setting it up for him to betray her or for him to back down or take the easy way out later down the line. I want to believe that they're not setting that up. What I want to believe is that this is him saying, "No, I trust you and I'm going to back you up.
We're gonna be partners.
We're going to be partners." He clearly is crazy about her, but like I said, he needs to figure his stuff out. He needs
Clearly.
to, yeah, clearly. Um, Actually, like we're not doing Supergirl reviews, but you could say the exact same thing about Jimmy Olsen because oh my God, the episode of this week, holy crap! Both of those people need to figure their shit out.
Yeah, it was nice to get a Jimmy focused sort of episode for
That was a
once.
really good scene. I know we gotta go back to Agent Carter, but that scene with Jimmy where he does his whole speech about why he loves Supergirl is kind of amazing. Like that was a great piece of acting.
Yeah, he acted that really well.
Yeah. Sorry. Anyway,
Back to Peggy
so
Carter.
back to Peggy Carter. So speaking of Peggy, the other flashbacks for this episode were of Peggy herself, where you see her as a kid and her brother and her like roughhousing and her mom kind of half enthusiastically, but like only half with any energy trying to tell her that she needs to be more ladylike. And the kid's looking at her like she's nuts. Um, and then we have the later on where she is I think in school, right? Or like she's training to be a code breaker.
Yeah, I think she's working for some kind of European agency breaking, I'm guessing, Nazi codes because this was 1940,
Yeah.
so the war was on.
Yeah, I'm assuming that it's one of those things where it was she got into a program so that she could be some of the women who are helping
Do that.
break break those codes. And she's just gotten engaged to a random man who, by the way, I found out, and this is like a 7 degree or 6 degrees of separation or whatever. But I found out that someone I write with on that writes for panels with me, he knew the actor who plays Peggy's fiance is someone that he knew in college.
That's fun.
So I found that out. And apparently, the way he put it was you can tell how TV like totally shifts your how you see attractiveness like on TV because he looks like just a normal, fairly good looking, but kind of not particularly like amazing sort of guy, but like he is that actor happens to be incredibly handsome. He said like ridiculously good looking, which I found kind of funny. So that's my antidote for that character. um, but yeah, so she had gotten engaged and she gets called in and I guess her professor, whoever's training them, says you've been chosen to be part of this elite task to be training. Was it like, I mean, it's obviously what becomes the whole Captain America program and stuff, but I forget how in the scene. Do you remember? How the person training her describes the job she's being offered.
Ah, yes. Basically, field work as a undercover spy somewhere. Uh, he basically says that he gets an offer letter for her to be trained to be a spy, to go somewhere and divulge enemy information. I'm
Then how
guessing
does that
connects back to what?
to like the Captain America program and stuff?
It could be the I think it was called the SOE. That could have been the SOE could have been the
Maybe.
British arm of what starts.
Yeah, that's true. And then you can assume that
And
she
assumingly, if the SOE is the people putting trained operatives to spy on what is essentially the Germans, that's possibly how the German doctor gets out of Germany.
maybe. Anyway, so the point is though that it's clearly going to be the job that gets her on the path uh to what she ends up doing throughout the Captain America movie and then throughout her show. And she first turns it down after, well, first she says like I need to ask my fiance, and then it cuts to her spending time, I think it's her engagement party, and her brother's there, and he's sitting with Peggy and her fiance, and her brother like is clearly not impressed with the guy. He's really concerned about the fact that Peggy is not like taking down, he tells her to like take a shot, was it take a shot or just take like the whole drink because she can put back liquor really well. And her fiance is like, what? Peggy can do that. And Peggy's like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And then when uh I forget if she mentions it or the fiance mentions, but that she was offered that job, and the brother is like, "But you didn't take it?" And the fiance kind of answers for her, "Oh no, can you imagine her?" And like that would be crazy. And then when the fiance leaves the table, then the brother says, "What the hell are you doing? He's not for you. You're clearly not happy. You're clearly holding back. And oh yeah, I was the one who suggested you for this job."
Bum bum bum.
Yeah. I don't know how to feel about this. Largely, I'm okay with this whole thing, but I do feel like it's almost a little bit too much of a male figure in her life telling her
Who to
what
be,
she.
what to
Yeah,
do.
but I think it works because her brother clearly knows her really well and doesn't force her to do anything, but just is telling her that he's seeing her be half of herself. And I don't mind that as much. It could have been way worse. And it was
True.
pointed out to me that since, spoiler alert, even though why would I, it's not really a spoiler review show, but he dies in like the next um in the classic someone comes with the letter because he was a soldier, and she sees through the window her parents freaking out, and she was trying on her wedding dress. So it's like this really specific,
Setup of domino cliches.
a little cliche, but it's this is one of those shows that kind of it plays up some of those tropes.
A little bit.
So So I didn't mind it that much. But yeah, she collapses on on the floor on in her wedding dress, and then the next thing you see is her where the wedding dress was put aside, her setting down her engagement ring and picking up the acceptance letter,
Bum bum bum.
and that's the last one we see.
One thing
So
I will say about her brother, I believe her brother was Michael, right?
yeah, well,
Yeah.
first of all, great name, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But at the point he's recommending her for the service, we don't really know how much he's seen of her, and two, this is the first time he's met her fiance, so he could be very well not seeing her for like much more than a few days out of the year.
That's true, but
So
at the
he's
same
making a lot of assumptions, maybe.
I'm gonna guess that they seemed very close. You know what I mean? This is just me like pulling from like the actors' stuff,
Performance.
you know? It and we also know Peggy pretty well. I mean, we know she's a brawler. We know the fact that she can punch and that she can hold her liquor. And so those are things we know. I think she's changed that much since between the flashbacks and when we see her in Captain America. Like I'm willing to believe that Michael's pretty spot on, especially because the message is clearly no, she should do this. Like that's the message of this episode is that she made the right choice, eventually.
Eventually.
So, but I did find it interesting that they went this way. I still like the fact that none of this is really about Steve. Lots of last season was about Steve
And Peggy
and
reacting to Steve.
Peggy and people assuming things about her and Steve and her dealing with the loss of him while everybody else brings him up willy-nilly, you know?
Yes.
Um, and him as a symbol and like people still using him as a symbol. All of that stuff was in the first season and her dealing with it. And I think it's commendable of the show that once she pours his blood down, and says goodbye, which is the last moment of the first season, they've done a very good job of not having her dwell on it. Like you can tell she still cares. Like she's a person who cares deeply, but they aren't making the second season about him at all. And I think I mean, like, she hasn't even mentioned him without, like, namelessly mentioning him. You know what I mean? She doesn't say to her new love interest, like, there was someone I cared about once. She hasn't brought that up.
And it would be really easy to do that too.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I don't mind if they do it later on in the season. I'm just commending them that, like, we're 4 episodes in, and they've done a very good job about not having it be about dwelling on the fact that she lost, you know, someone that she was in love with.
Also, if you haven't noticed yet, but they are really pushing Peggy and Dr. Wilkes together.
I know, but I really like it because he's really charming.
I know, but I don't know if we've mentioned it on the show yet.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying it as if like it was a warning, but I was like, but I really like him. Yeah, I will say like I totally get people who still are frustrated by the fact that he still has a not very active role by means of his situation. But I'm glad that he's in a lot of scenes. I'm glad that a lot of it is her being supportive of him and then him supporting her.
Also, he's a physicist who's very key to very much all of the plot points
That
in a
is true.
way that,
And he's not just sitting around. He is trying to help Howard to figure this all out. And I think Howard even says that he's clearly really brilliant.
yeah, but also they could have used Howard in the way that they're using Dr. Wilkes, but they're clearly not, and they're keeping the focus on him.
That is true too.
Because
Um,
Howard's usually the resident smarty, and so when you can use, a primary character,
yeah.
they're gonna
I'm
they've
my
been keeping it
one
focus on him a little bit more.
my one concern though. is that this episode he starts to see a crack in like space, which is clearly similar to like he's clearly connected to
The matter
Whitney
still.
Frost and to Whitney Frost because it's getting worse as she's devouring more things. And by the way, that mice thing was so eerie. Like that she's so like scientific about it and like cold and everything. Oh, that was so creepy. But it's clearly getting worse as she's getting more. And I'm real worried what this that it could mean her or it could mean Dr. Wilkes biting it by the end of the season, like him having to make
A
a
sacrifice play.
a sacrifice play or something like that. I think that could very well happen.
It
I'm not
could,
so I'm prepared for that, but I think at
but
the same time there are so many ways that they could do it where he and Peggy end up together, which they have such good as much as I really like Souza, I feel like
Peggy and Dr. Wilkes have the better chemistry.
yeah. I will say that even though there is kind of a love triangle going on between those three, so far they've been very good about keeping it very light.
They've also been downplaying Zoza.
You know, I wouldn't say that necessarily. He does a lot.
Compared to
That is true.
Wilkes,
But I also like the fact that they're not like his commitment to Peggy isn't just a like for Souza isn't just a romantic one, which means that he can put aside his feelings for her because if that wasn't there, then all we'd have is him pining for her, and that wouldn't be interesting, and that would actually get frustrating. So right now,
also,
I'm okay with how that's being handled.
as Mrs. Frost's powers are developing, you might say she's getting cold to pleas of mercy.
No, no, we are not making references to that movie.
We are making
Also, also, it's not even a cold themed villain.
She is freezing them.
No, she's not.
Yeah, they're freezing and they're.
No, they're not. They're like poisoned or something. I don't think they're being frozen.
I think they're being frozen in chat.
Okay, fine, whatever. Whatever to bending the plot to your will so that you can make a terrible joke.
Yes.
Whatever. So, I feel like we bounced around a lot in this
We've talked
episode.
a lot of high level stuff. We didn't really talk about the plot of this episode,
That's
which
true.
really
Did
didn't.
did we talk though about how and we might have and tell me if we did how I really liked how the plot does move forward. However, like it a lot of times with flashback episodes, it's only flashback. They don't get to anything else. And this was a good mixture of flashback that builds a lot of the character while also doing substantial stuff with the plot.
Yeah, things moved forward in this episode, but we didn't get most of the character stuff was in the backstory stuff.
But it was a good mix of both then. So we got a lot of the plot moving forward and pieces coming together for the heroes while at the same time
Getting
giving us
completely
like
stalled.
good meaty
Good
so it was
meaty plot.
a good meaty character stuff.
Yeah.
So it was a good mixture of both, and that's what I think makes this episode feel really fulfilling. Feels really it feels like you got a lot of story out of it because you get the mixture of both.
Yeah, and it was well balanced. Um, I, th- I think it's really interesting what they're doing with Kurtwood Smith, even though he's like holding the power. And I think, as we said before, he's the start of them not trusting higher up in the government and in agencies outside of their own circle, and
That's
possibly
true.
moving on to form Shield, because
My
whoever they went for the judge, they, to get this warrant to raid on the club, the social club,
hmm
he leaked that information out, and it got to Kurtwood Smith, and he shut down the agency. So where that
my sorry. My whole thing about it is I get that they need this character, but he's also a character that always frustrates me. Like this kind of guy that's like wormy and you know he's up to no good, but the characters can't prove it, and it's causing everything to be backed up.
I don't know if I call him wormy, but he's a snake.
Snaky, yeah, I guess that's true.
He's
Because Wormy
sneaky.
tends to be less confident.
Yeah. He's going around mixing things up and then slowly poisoning what he can sink
Sure.
his teeth into.
Okay, yeah, go with that metaphor. So, yeah, I'm like, I'm gonna be glad when he's handled because clearly, like, I don't know, Dottie is in their hands now, and because we've completely forgot about that, about her. So Dottie's in his hands now, and he's undermined a lot of things, and he's discredited Dr. Wilkes, and he's just one of those characters that makes me so frustrated. But I also get that that's kind of the point.
To be fair,
Um,
they don't have to out him in this season. They could out him to the audience and everything, but I mean like he
but they
could
need to
keep his
stop him.
power. He could
They
keep
still
his
need. I know, but they still need to stop him, and that's the big thing.
They need to
So,
stop Whitney Frost. That's the
but
main
I'm
villain.
saying, but Mike, if they're going to stop Whitney Frost, they also have to stop the person that's helping her out. They need to at least stop him from undermining them enough to. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what
Like
you're
he,
saying, but he could still be the director of the FBI over there and still have power there. He could just start
yeah.
disavowing things and saying,
Anyway, well, but I think this once again goes into. I think that they're going to end up and we've said this each time that they're going to end up forming Shield at the end of the season. I'm really confident about this. When I go back and listen to this in like a month or two, once it's over, I will and I'm wrong, then you know I can get mad at myself. But I'm really confident because they're setting it up to be that they can't trust people in the other parts of the government, and the SSR is kind of fading away, and Howard's way more prominent in the series right now, and we all know that he's the one that sets everything. You know, that really is the driving force. Um, there's just a lot of parts to this that I think are going to end up leading to her becoming the first director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I really believe that's what's going to happen. So that will be interesting. And yeah, I'm trying to think there's anything else in this episode. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
we get the agency shut down. We had
Oh, we
the
have the torture thing,
yeah, the
which
torture
isn't
thing.
as bad. They really set it up that she's like going to cross a line. And granted, she kind of does, but not in like not nearly as far as they made it out to be in the commercial.
They gave him a really bad cold.
Yeah. I mean, it's still fairly torturous because they're doing mind games and stuff. But in the commercial, they made it like, will she go too far? I'm just like, Jesus, what are they? Um, and especially right after Supergirl, where Supergirl was all about like basically holding someone illegally and then trying to torture them into. I think that was what happened. I'm trying to remember now. But yeah, it's still shady. It's still like I'm not sure what the lesson was supposed to be from that, but that's always a problem when you have like an organization that that can be slightly above the law, which is kind of the problem with Shield in general, not just the show, but like the concept. It's kind of a problem,
Slight problem.
slight problem. So I think with that, I think I've said what I need to say. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, Whitney Frost did reveal her powers to her husband at
Yes,
the end
that
of
did
this
happen.
episode.
And she is clearly like, I'm in control now. Um, I like how that was handled too. I figured that they wouldn't be able to hear and that like the bug would be absorbed in with the guy, but I like the fact that they know something crazy went down.
Yeah, and they know it's coming from Whitney.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, then that's the thing too. I like the fact that they caught on pretty quickly to her being the mastermind
And she's
to,
making the power move right now.
yeah, exactly. So that should be really interesting. I think next episode they're going to try to get to some of the members of the club, if I saw that correctly. Um, we have the dad from Twin Peaks is going to be back because he was one of the table members, and I saw him in the preview, so that'll be fun. And I think, yeah, it's just like it's all the different people on the good guy side, on Peggy's side, coming together for this big scheme. So that should be a fun episode.
Yeah, and it seems like this scheme is going to go around the SSR.
Yeah, so that should be interesting. Um, so with that, like I said, I am quite tired, and I had fun, but I think I'm ready to call it a night.
Alright.
All right. Well, this has been Katie and Mike, and you can check us out at justplainsomething.com and on YouTube. I might as well say the YouTube page. It's Just Plain Something on YouTube. So we'll see you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.